Hello, thanks for joining me again on Keeping It Together with ZeeZee. It is so good to have you here, a place where there's truth, a place where there are answers, and a place where there is help for your relationship. I'd like to talk today about something that everyone who's in a relationship has to deal with at some point, and I hope you'll get a few tips here and there. If you have any more questions, be sure to contact me, and you'll see my details at the end of this video. So, how much sex is too much sex? What do you do if your husband or your wife actually refuses to take no for an answer? So for women who are looking forward to all the sex they will have when they get married, I have news for you. You might actually get exactly what you're asking for and then some. Sex is a beautiful thing though, so don't be afraid. But then sometimes it is causing too much conflict in the home. How do we handle that? There are tons of women out there who feel like their spouse just wants too much sex. It was great in the beginning though, when it was just the two of you with minimal responsibilities and lots of free time. But times change. We get busier at work. Oh, and then there's that whole pregnancy thing. And with the pregnancy come the kids. In other words, we're just too tired to have sex as often as we used to. But just to clarify the question and attempt to answer it before we get ahead of ourselves though, what is too much sex? What will you consider too much sex? I think it actually depends on whom you ask. It totally depends on whoever it is answering that question. There's a scene in a Woody Allen movie where a man and his wife go to see a marriage counselor. So the counselor asks them both how often they have sex. So one spouse says 4 times a week, and that is just too much. And the counselor asks the second person and he says, it's actually about 4 times a week, correct? But that's just not enough sex. So now we know that it just depends on who you're asking. We've clarified the fact that there are really no rules around what is considered too much sex, because that solely depends on whom you ask. It depends on the couple, it depends on their lifestyle, it depends on their needs, all depends on that. Let's now deal with some of the issues that arise when couples have this problem as one of the ones that you're dealing with. The problem is when one of you wants sex all the time, it can become overwhelming for your partner who doesn't want sex as often. What they start to feel like is, regardless of how much sex they give you, remember 4 times is just too much, you'll just demand even more, right? This can be confusing for the both of you because it is possible that at the beginning of your relationship, you had similar sex drives. You were having sex 7 days a week, but then your partner starts to not want to have sex as often, which is boring. And now you're having sex 3 times a week. So what your partner does in an attempt to be accommodating is grudgingly accept to increase the number of times you have sex from 3 to 4. However, the sex-starved partner still feels like this is not enough, and that just leaves his partner to feel like whatever effort she makes to accommodate him, whatever efforts those are, they're not being appreciated. Enter in anger, frustration, resentment from both parties. And you can only imagine what happens next with this couple. Fighting, conflict, and so on. It is hard to feel loved and want to be intimate with someone who is angry with you. It is absolutely difficult. The sex-starved partner has to keep in mind, though, that the best way to get your spouse not to do something you would really want them to do is to demand it angrily. What this does is kills their motivation any day, and it gives rise to the feeling of reluctance. No one wants to be yelled at to have sex. Even if they do it, they're reluctantly doing it. A partner who asks for too much sex needs to realize that they cannot make demands. They cannot get into a funk when their partner does not want to have sex as much as they do. For example, most women, in as much as they do love to have sex, shocked? Don't be men, we love having sex just as much. Most women do not always want to have sex. For example, the 3 to 5 days every month that they're on their period, we see that as a chance to take a break from thinking about sex or having sex. What this does do is helps us later on enjoy it even more. But there are lots of couples who had a great sex life, and as life goes on, things happen, and one of them no longer wants to have sex as much as they used to. It might be the kids, it could be a medical condition. It could just be that the woman no longer feels attractive, no longer feels desired. And if her husband is frustrated by the reduction in the frequency of sex, what he needs to do is to learn how to stop making demands. Somehow, he just needs to rise above the disappointment. It is not the end of the world if your spouse doesn't want to have sex sometimes. Just learn how not to make demands and learn how to make requests. What is a request? A request means the other person can deny what you have asked for. They can deny it without having to pay some penalty, such as silent treatment or resentment or revenge. What if your spouse refuses to take no for an answer though? Then let your spouse know that they're well on their way to having you never say yes to anything they want anymore. Now, this is not a threat. It is just more a way to jar them to have conversation and say, listen, you're being too demanding right now. You're being more demanding than you are understanding. There's obviously something we need to talk about. Can we do that? This is a way to just let your partner know that constantly demanding things of you is not working. This is also where very open communication is important. If you are able to effectively express how you are feeling to each other, you are able to agree with what things are a priority, when they are a priority, and what given time they are a priority. You are able to agree who is going to have to sacrifice their needs this time for the other person to have their way. If you love each other and are effective in the way you communicate, I find that this helps deal a lot with this situation effectively. So for couples who are just starting off, be aware that this is one of the possible issues you might have to deal with at some point in your relationship. So how do you avoid it? Or in the least, how do you solve it if it actually arises? You prepare yourself by working on open and effective communication with your spouse. It will go a long way in helping you develop a sexual relationship that you are both happy with for the lifetime of your marriage. Have something to say to ZeeZee? Please post your comments on ZeeZeeIO.com, where you can also sign up to get free tips on how to make your marriage extremely blissful. Or you can send me questions via email, questions@ZeeZeeIO.com. Sex is a beautiful thing. Let's learn to effectively talk about it openly, honestly, communicate well. Here's to taking your sex life to cloud 9 and beyond.